a founding member of Icosa. I'm an artist and I'm an educator. I teach at ACC and also Contemporary Austin.
I'm Brooke Gassio, and I've been part of Icosa since the beginning. Jonas invited me on, and we spearheaded, came up with the name together in Tara Goolsby's living room. So.
Awesome, thanks. I'm Erin Cunningham. I'm also one of the sort of founding, I guess, Brooke and Jonas then approached me at some point. I saw Jonas at a collab show and he was like, hey, I got this idea for the collective. And I was, on board from then on. Artist here in Austin. I currently am an assistant professor of practice at UT Austin, and I teach in the core program. And I'm not from Austin, I'm from Hawaii.
Hi, I'm Maya Gutierrez. I'm from Monterrey, Mexico, and I'm an architect and a sculptor. I've been with Icosa a year and a few months. I started right before the pandemic, which was definitely a weird time to start in a collective, but been loving it so far and happy to be part of it.
Yay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, excellent. Well, we want to go ahead and just kind of start out with a little bit of our history of how we, got started. I was living in Minneapolis. My wife had a fellowship at the University of Minnesota, and I joined a group called Rosalux, and they had been going for at that time, about 12 years. They've been going for almost 20 years at this point. And it was a group of artists that kind of came together to create an artist-run space, collective, to be able to show work. And so I was a member of Rosalux for 2 years and really loved the format and, how and the camaraderie that came out of that. And so in returning to my hometown of Austin, I was really happy to see a lot of the people that I went to UT with were still here. Erin, Tara, Brooke, et cetera. And so I started, going around to art openings and getting the band together, kind of floating the idea of, hey, there's this format, it seems to work. Do you think that would work? And people were like, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. So we ended up, kind of coming together and, as Brooke said, in the living room of Tara Goolsby, our name was actually created by or thought of by Jennifer Balkin. She was a member at the first part of it. And she came in and I remember, and she was like, well, it's going to be 20 members, because that's what Rosalux was. And she was like, well, Icosa, an icosahedron, it's a 20 equal sided shape. And I was like, that's actually really great. I mean, that's a great name for a collective. It kind of has it all there. So we went with that and we were looking for, some way to kind of keep the momentum up. And, we were like, well, why don't we show as a group for, East 2015. And so we were looking for a venue, and Brooke was good friends with Juke's wife, Ann Juke. And we had approached him because he had just moved into a new location on airport. And the first thought was, hey, can we put some work up in your new building and, put it on the East roster? And he was all about it. And in talking to him, he actually asked us, well, would you want to use our old space? And so we didn't know that was an option. Justin has some pics that he could probably put up there of what that space looked like. But, we opened up the doors and it was basically, there were a couple cars in there. There was oil stains, a couple lifts, and it was a lot. And we had a month to figure it out. So we ended up kind of collecting people. We had approached, I was like, well, let's approach everybody and anybody that might be interested. So Sarah Vanderbeek came on board, Katie Corin came on board, Greg Bay came on board. We had Anna Pedersen come on board. You can see right there, Katie Horan, she's there. And so this group of people came together and, cleaned it up, and that's what we came up with. And so it all worked out really well. We enjoyed working with one another. And so after East, we decided to kind of keep it going. And Josh Green over at Pump Projects was pretty impressed by what we had done. And so he gave us a really good lease. And we were able to turn that space into a more permanent gallery, as you can see there. Little side note, all that white paint came from the city. It was all recycled paint. So thank you, City of Austin. And so we started kind of to figure out what our structure would be. And, from there, We ended up moving over to Canopy due to being displaced back in, what was it, 2017. So fortunately, we ended up on our feet over at Canopy. We have a beautiful space over there, which is, we love being part of the community there as well. And, it was sort of the same thing when we moved there. It was, we needed to do renovations. So instead of hiring somebody to do it, we always have just kind of done it ourselves because it helps to build camaraderie. I think when you're sanding and you're covered with drywall dust, there's something that makes a connection. I don't know what it is, but there you go. And so that's where we're at now. And yeah, it's really kind of neat. We just celebrated our 5th anniversary, going into actually our 6th anniversary. And it's just really kind of amazing the camaraderie that we have. And then also the people that have come through Icosa as members. We always make sure to put that on our page as alumni, because there's a lot of great people that have come through, Adrian Aguilar, Betty McConan, Rachel Wolfson-Smith, Sarah Vanderbeek that I had mentioned before, Katie Horan, and I think it's important to kind of keep that pedagogy, that history with it, because it's not only one person that makes this organization, it's the group that makes it. And so very, very, very happy that we kind of share that on our site. Brooke, did you want to go into more detail how we're structured?
Yeah, so I was going to talk a little about our programming and what we have developed over the years. So as Jonas was saying, our kind of backbone is our 2-person exhibition schedule. So every 6 weeks or so, we have a 2-person show, and those members can decide what they want to do with their slot. So sometimes they collaborate together, but sometimes they open it up. And Aaron's going to talk more about that in a minute. But we also realized that between shows, we have this window space that's kind of left empty. So while we're deinstalling and installing the gallery space, we've opened that up in a program called window dressing. And Liana Leslie heads that up. And basically, it's an opportunity for us to open up to the community and bring in emerging artists to fill the window space in whatever manner they choose. And then we also have a program called Icosa Talks, and Tammy Rubin heads that up, and she interviews whichever artists are showing at the time. So that's an opportunity to put an artist talk online or in the space, and kind of find out more about what the exhibition is at the time. And then we also have exchange shows, which Jonas heads up, and he and Jen Wilson actually head that up, and we've been able to trade with other artist collectives around the country, including Tiger Strikes Asteroid in LA, and then Rosalux in Minneapolis. And those are amazing because we're able to get to know artists in another collective, get to know how they run their collectives, just exchange ideas, be in their space, be in their city, and then vice versa. We host them here in Austin and do the same, and it's always a great time. And then we also have a newly formed program called Crit Group, and that's just for our Icosa members at the moment, although we're planning to do a larger Crit Group in the near future that opens up to the community. But that's an opportunity because we spend so much time working on the gallery together and kind of running the ins and outs of putting on shows. It's an opportunity for us to talk about our work itself as artists, and so we're really excited about that as well. And then, all of the shows and galleries and programming, it all requires, a lot of work. So we basically are broken up into committees, and each member is required to sit on a committee, and sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 committees. And those include operations, finance, grants, archiving, facilities, events, gift shop, marketing, PR, and website, and diversity and inclusion. And so for all of those committees, we're all playing different roles, talking to one another, just kind of basically making it all happen. Yeah, so it's a lot of work, but we have a lot of fun doing it, and we're structured as a cooperative. There I'm sorry, we're structured as a collective, but we started out as a cooperative where we were going to have a board, but we quickly found out that that wasn't really the structure that we wanted to follow. So we fell back into a collective format where we vote horizontally instead of a vertical system. So whenever we have a decision to make, we all put it up for a vote and vote on it so that everyone's voices are heard. And yeah, I think that's about it for my section. Erin, take it away.
Thanks, Brooke. Yeah, so I was gonna, I guess, take some time to elaborate a little bit on the two-person shows and that structure. People, I get that question comes up a lot, as far as it seems unique. Like I'd never heard of a, programming like that before until Jonas talked about Rosalux. And Carolyn's introduction, I really appreciated hearing that as far as what your perspective was and the way that you talked about, like, these people, and Brooke's art or something, but when you come to Icosa, it's just like something different has happened. Like Leon and Amy's show that was just up. I know someone came in when I was doing galleries that knows Leon, and they saw these sculptural pieces and they're like, what's going on here? And like super exciting. It's just, it switches it up. And so that's kind of, I liked hearing that, Caroline, because I knew I was going to try to delve into a little bit more, but we do have our programming, and it's kind of always an interesting thing of how we pair up. People are wondering, and I make the joke of it's like asking someone to the dance at times, or it can be, but it's always worked fairly organically. You might find someone in a collective that you make similar work as far as medium goes, and you think that would be a good collaborative, or you just go in a completely different direction and think about like, what could these two people do together, and whether or not, like Brooke was saying, you choose to use your time slot for just the individual works because you think that they would really hold a space well and complement each other, or you say, I'm going to collaborate with this person, all the work is just on one collaboration, or a little bit of individual, or you can use the space to curate. And more people have started to do that. I think when we got into our new space, which has been good, because I mean, even though every time we do a two-person show, the work looks different for those people, it's been nice for us to not be so just like inclusive, like being able to open it up and bring other people in. So for myself, as someone who is there in the start, like I've had the whole range of it, right? So the very first two-person show we had was myself and David Bay. And it was what we had, I don't remember what we had, 3 months. They were like, okay, we got 3 months to start this. And David and I were the only ones that were like, okay, we'll do it. And he's someone that I might not have like paired up with, otherwise in terms of our work. But it was great because it was interesting to put it up in outside perspective again, people thinking about how it speaks together. And in my second show, I actually paired up with Alyssa Taylor Went, and that's my first time really collaborating on a show. And so we just had, it was just so unique and different, like going crazy, painted the walls black. It was our last show in that space. I made work that I was really different than I would have, but I think she and I had similar interests, and we came together and our concept sort of evolved. And so, it really got me to play and experiment and break out of, my usual body of work. I curated, Amanda McInerney and I paired up, and we decided we want to curate where we really wanted to bring people from outside of Austin and outside of Texas. Excuse me. So we wanted to kind of get new faces and new names in there. We had a lot of connections through different places we've taught, and in our different art communities. So we kind of pulled from that. So that was really, kind of refreshing and nice. And other people, Tammy Rubin's done a lot of, curating shows that have been really, really interesting, bringing in such a huge, diverse group of people. And so, and then like Sarah, that I collaborated on this last one, and it was right when the pandemic started, and it was a different way to collaborate with Sarah. We didn't know what was going to happen, but when we were in lockdown, as two-person exquisite corpse, right? So she would drop something at my doorstep, I would take it and then respond to it. So it's really just, with whatever's going on, it's allowed us to really play. And like Brooke was saying, we were talking earlier, is like the collaboration part of just not only these shows, but what Jonas is saying, and working on the space and building it out, has become a big part of it, like become a big part of us as artists, but also just in the collective and how we work together. So I think the collaboration is beyond just what we talk about in those 2-person shows. And I've learned a lot. So for me, I've learned about curating. I've never done that before. So that space gives us an opportunity to sort of learn things that'll help us as we go out further and show in other galleries, and just experiment. So that's kind of how, it's evolved in terms of those 2-person slots and what it can be. So it's not always just so rigid. I'll pass it to Mai.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to go a little into the behind the scenes, the admin and membership area. There's a lot of stuff that we need to work on that's not necessarily fun, but it has to get done, emails, scheduling, creating protocols as Icosa evolves. We have our monthly meetings, and someone needs to run that. Someone needs to take minutes. So that's a lot of work that happens that needs to happen. When we take in new members, we have a protocol, and these past couple of years, it's landed usually towards early in the year. I think it's been February for the past couple of years that we've needed new members. So what we do is we reach out to people that have applied in the past. We send out a social media and email blast. Artists will send in their applications with images of their work, their letter of intent, their artist statement, and it gets reviewed by all of the members of Icosa. We have a point system in which it gets voted on, and it gets narrowed down to, let's say, our top 5. Then we meet together as a group, go through every application, talk about it, and vote with the members that we want to accept for the new year. It's nice to have that system in place that is as part of the creating protocols. As Icosa grows, we have to figure out ways of running the business that feels equal to all of the members, and like Brooke said, everybody has a voice. So yeah, that's
And Maya, I just wanted to add in, when we're choosing members, this, but we're not only looking for other artists whose work we admire, think would be a good fit, we're also looking for members that would be a good fit. So, if we need someone who's good at websites, or we need, we're also looking at what they could contribute as a community as well.
Exactly. Yes, we have all the different committees, and some committees might need a little bit more help than others, and we're interested in knowing how these members are willing and able to contribute to Icosa as a group. So it's not just about the art, it's who you are as human beings and how you're able to treat others. Another source of communication that we use is Slack. Without Slack, I think we would have a lot of trouble communicating with each other. We have all the different channels, and you can go in there and type in a question to somebody else and get a quick response. We do a lot of organization on Slack. Since the pandemic started, we've been doing all our meetings on Zoom, which was weird at the beginning, but we adapted and have been using it as a tool ever since. And we're eager to get back to face-to-face meetings, but I think we've learned that we can use Zoom as a tool even in the future when we don't need it. If there's someone out of town that can't, come to the face-to-face meetings, we can just set up an iPad and continue to use it as a tool for us. There's also the Google Drive, where we share all our files.
If anybody in the audience knows anybody from Zoom or Slack, we'd be willing to do a commercial for a fee. So just please let us know, DM us, and we'd love to do that. So
yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. We also do a lot of communicating through the Google Drive. We have all our files there. We recently did a little organization on there because we've got a lot of files from the past, and it's easy to get lost in the drive. What else did I want to touch on? Oh, a big thing for us are our interns. They help out tremendously And we want to give them as much exposure as possible so that they can learn to grow as artists and, you know, learn how it is to be in a collaborative. And Juliet has been doing a great job on the Bartlett project with Jonas. We'll touch on that here in a second. And it's been great to see her grow and gain confidence. So that's something that we really keep in mind as well, is taking care of our interns. Yeah, Jonas, I'll hand it over, or Brooke, go ahead.
Well, I just had something to add. I realized we didn't really talk about like how the rent gets paid, and we all contribute dues every month, and basically split up the rent. And our hope is that artists will sell enough in the gallery or in the gift shop to cover their dues. So, and then occasionally we get a grant or two, but mostly it's us funding the gallery ourselves.
Yeah. We are self-funded, largely a self-funded organization. We do have, fundraising shows, which is our juried show that we try to keep the price down, but it costs money to put a show on. And so, yeah. And then also, to tag on what Maya was saying, yes, the world runs on interns. Thank you so much, Juliet and Natalie. You guys are great. So I just wanted to give a shout out with that. More and more, we find ourselves kind of becoming an umbrella organization, being able to use our nonprofit status to help empower others. We kind of had a kind of an introspective, look at our organization last year around this same time, and kind of thinking of like, okay, cool. Well, we put on shows for ourselves, but what can we do for the community that we belong to and it's around us? And so that's when window dressing really started to come into being. And then also, being able to do other things where we can help empower others. And so one of the projects we're doing is in Bartlett, Texas, which is a town of a little over 1,500 people, about an hour northeast of Austin. And we've been working with Leslie Moody Castro on a project out there where we've come in and we brought 4 artists to work within the city with the community. And we're excited to see how that goes. For more information on that, you can go to our website. We have Jade Walker, Ellie, and Mark Minji and Ame. And really great artists. They're doing some great work out there. We had a book drive, which collected a little over 850 books, which was great. And we can't wait to see what they do. And so we see ourselves kind of moving more and more to that. It kind of started out where it was just insular. And now I think that we're in a position, because again, we're a self-funded organization, to where we're able to kind of open our doors and share a little bit more and kind of, be a real kind of change maker in the community, as, you see with Big Medium and other organizations throughout Austin. So.
And then the new sound, what's the new one that we're talking about?
Soundscape. Yeah.
Soundscape.
So when Tammy and I, we were working on, Tammy and Tara had a great show that happened this last, it was December, I believe it was, called Transmissions. And it was basically like a mini Fusebach festival. We had like 4 shows in one. It was every week we were redoing the gallery. And so we were talking about how to do audio outside, because there's, at the space, there's always, something to figure out. And so in my conversation with Tammy, we had kind of hit on the idea of, well, Satan, that's right across from us, they have an audio system and they're really not open at night. Maybe we could use that. And we ended up going a different direction, but that kind of stuck in my mind. And so I actually approached the owners of Satan and asked them, would you guys be, willing to collaborate with us on a project where we could use your sound system at night? Because you guys close at 4 and then it just sits there. And so we're going to start a project where we're going to, put out an open call for artists that have sound projects that we can play on a loop at night at the Canopy Complex via the Satan audio system. And so that's something that we're kind of still working on, get the structure of it and everything, but we're really excited about it. And it just, kind of adds to, using our organization to kind of, create a platform for others in our community.
And don't worry, it won't be on a constant loop. We're going to let some space be in there. So if you have a studio at Canopy, it's okay. It won't be constant.
It will be tastefully curated. How about that?
There you go.
Sure. What else do we live at?
So Caroline, I think that was basically our presentation. If you have any questions.
You guys were fast. I was like, oh, this is going to take the whole time.
We practice. We practice.
Streamline. Yeah.
We actually had the same experience about a month ago when the committee members did the coffee chat, and we're like, we have so much to talk about. It's going to take an hour. And then we're like, oh, we're done. Okay. I do have some questions, and I also have I've been taking some notes while you're talking about some of the things that really struck me. One of them is just hearing about this movement outward. And, when you started Icosa, and as an artist, I understand this idea, like you, that's not me. Okay. You kind of start it because as an artist, you're like, I want to have shows. I want to show my work. And that's a really hard thing to do. And so you create a space where you can show your work, and then this collective, of course, started with this duo model where it's like, I'm going to show my work, but I'm also going to show with another person, or we're going to create together. And then hearing how kind of after your initial group got their fill of showing their own work, there's this sense of like, well, maybe we'll curate some work, and bring in some other artists. And then from there, it's like, well, how can we bring in the whole community? How can we do something for the community and even for another community, for Bartlett, And it's really exciting to hear about this growth outward. But I'm curious, and maybe this is a question for Mai in some ways, but for new members who may be at any point on their own artistic trajectory, what is that like, in terms of, do you feel a pressure to not show your own work, or do you feel a hunger to show your own work and then move on? Or I'd love to hear about your experience in particular.
Sure. I don't know that I feel either direction. I mean, I'm eager to show my work. I think what I'm most excited about is the collaboration side of it. Because like Erin said, most of the work that I do is done by myself, in my studio. And it's going to be fun working with someone who I may not have had the chance to do so in the past, and seeing how that evolves. That's what's very exciting to me. And also the amount of friends that I've made through this group. Like Jonas and I are going to be working together on a project, and Erin and I in the future as well. And it's been great having this like sense of family through it, people that you can depend on, no matter what's going on in your life, like you always have a friend that's going to be there. I think that's huge. And that's been one of the biggest benefits that I've had from Icosa, as well, just as being motivated. Like there's a lot of very talented, motivated people in our group that just inspire you to find different avenues of showing your work, or working with people, or giving to the community. So those have been the greatest things that I've gathered from Icosa and hope to continue to work on.
Yeah. To add to that too, real quick, that Maya brings up, I think in that learning from each other, I think has been interesting. Like everyone's different skill sets, so like I can't do AV stuff at all, but like I can help with drywall, but I learned that from Jonas, really. So, and I've helped other people with jobs that needed or projects. They're like, hey, I need to do mold making and I don't know how, or like I've helped Betty on that. So it's kind of nice as we also know what each other's skills are. And sometimes it's harder or weird to just go find someone in the community within our group and the 20 people. If they can't do it or don't know it, they know someone that does. So it's really helped me and everyone else kind of like troubleshoot things, or get connected to things. So that's been really helpful.
Yeah, it's kind of like that old Italian saying, amici di amici, friends of friends. And so it's like, and that's one of the things, and that's, to me, that's been, the biggest thing that's come out of this whole thing is that community and that feel. And we have a gallery space where we can show work, but it's that community. And that's the thing that gets me each time.
Yeah. There have been, obviously these last 5 years have been pretty challenging across the board. And there have been moments then that we've been painting the gallery all together, or, sanding or whatever it may be. And just kind of looking around and just feeling like we've got each other through this, and to have that sense of family, really, like Mai said, it's really powerful.
Yeah.
That's great. And I'm just thinking about that compared to like doing an MFA, like going to grad school, and you get a little bit of that community, but there's so much pressure on top of you that the community is almost more just like, help me get through this, And I feel like this community sounds much more like you're deciding how much pressure is on you. You're deciding what your priorities are. You're deciding what matters, and kind of how to, and also because you need to share the responsibilities, you can always call on somebody else when it's too much for you personally, I'm assuming. Yeah.
And I think you tagged on it. I mean, in MFA, that was one of the things that I really enjoyed the community of my MFA program. And then you get out, right? And then you're just like, oh, what? Where am I? And no one talks about art all the time. And it's just like, so to be around and kind of create that. And that's one of the things that I think, as an organization, if anybody has any questions on how to organize something, like we more than welcome to help you out, because I think, the more cooperatives, the more collectives that we can have, I think the better the world's going to be, honestly. But, that's just my opinion. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. And with that said, if people have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and I'll be looking at those in a minute and getting your questions answered. I did have another thing that came up to me just as which was the idea of play. And I think in the pandemic, especially, there's a real sense of like, you kind of have to play with yourself, you're like in this little bubble. And I'm thinking about this in particular because I had a baby 7 months ago. So she's still really little, and it's like, she doesn't necessarily need to have friends yet because she doesn't even understand really like what to do with them. But watching her learn how to play by herself and learn how to have focus and how to like stay with something, and just that, I think, is a really interesting thing to be watching. But I think, for myself personally, I'm playing by myself in the studio, like I'm coming up with my own problems, solving them, switching them around. And when you have a chance to play with another person, those ideas are just like exponentially growing out of there. And so that seems like a really important aspect of what your pairings allow you to do, is bring your own ideas and then have this other person, and then it all kind of goes out from there. I'd love to hear what some of your experiences have been in terms of just being surprised by what happened, or challenged, or feeling like you had a pie in the sky idea that you were allowed to do through the collective. So if you guys want to go around for that.
Well, I could speak to that with my last show, Meet Me at the Water with Kate Chiligi. When we first started, we were doing what Erin said she and Sarah were doing, where we were dropping off work on each other's porches. And really the first few ideas were kind of flops when we first started working. And then, we started gathering ideas out of it and just playing with it. And but it was really, you don't have any control over what's going to happen when you're working with someone else, because you just can't. You have to kind of let it be what it's going to become between you. And it becomes more like a conversation, like batting it back and forth between each other, than one idea that you're going to see to fruition. And so, it had lots of holes in it, like by nature, and you just kind of had to let the new ideas come in, and you couldn't hold it too tightly. Just kind of let it become what it was gonna become.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to tag on to what you just said, Brooke, I think that's the thing is to let yourself go, and that's one of the things with play that's wonderful. It's like you get into that that frame of mind of where it's almost a dream state. My wife, she's a director in an early childhood program and plays a very important part. And, I have a son, he's turned 4, and just to see him kind of playing with blocks and singing to himself and this and that, that's that kind of stance you really want to get to in the studio, because that's when stuff happens. And so I think you kind of set yourself up. I mean, for example, one of the, when Jan and I had a show this last what was it, June, we started throwing back things back and forth, months ahead of time, throwing pictures of our work because of COVID. And then also just kind of terms that we were thinking about that were in our head. And so it just organically happened to kind of come up with the title of the show and kind of the theme, and it really kind of gets, once you get all the work in, it's the self-curation, but, it's kind of just setting yourself up and that back and forth, and just keeping it light, not keeping it, keeping it, non-rigid, keeping it organic.
Yeah, I mean, I could say too, for me with the 2 shows I know that I've done like collaborative with just the artists have been totally like different experiences. But like I said earlier, just different things would come out of them. Sarah and I, when we first paired up, and we did not know when we actually were going to sit down and start really working on the show that now this there was like the PPE was becoming an issue, and she was already making masks with these doilies, like N95 masks, like the year before. It was already something in works. And so it was really funny because we're talking about it because I really responded to those. And I was like, I think the work she was starting was great. And it was something I could sort of play off of. And but we knew when we're making it that no matter what we did, something about the pandemic is going to get embedded in there. Like there's a symbolism, or to go see artwork. Like when we did open up for that show, that was the first show we opened up during the pandemic, and had people come in. It was just they're definitely having those masks and stuff in there. We didn't want to make the narrative about the pandemic, but there's nothing we could do with some of the symbols that people were going to come in and read that into it, which was an okay thing, but it was just really an interesting, you could say, experiment in that, to see what happens with work in never thought I'd be doing that, is trying to put together a show during a pandemic, and how we collaborate. And then it's a totally different experience, like with Alyssa, Taylor Went and I think she's here, but I felt like with her, we were doing like science experiments sometimes, or like melting aluminum and pouring it on plywood to see what it would do, or, making these molds and filling them with this foam material we've never used just to see what happened. And that was great for me to work with her, because that really was playing it, trying new materials that I'd never tried, just things I'd never thought I would do. And it was a ton of work, but we were doing so many different things. And I was along the way, I was one of those ones where it's like, I'm not sure how's it going to come together. And it just, sometimes that's what I've started to learn with these shows too. And whenever I see everyone else's shows, like sometimes, everyone does great work. You're like looking at their process or where they're at when they're starting to install, and you're kind of like, what's this going to be? And I love that every time if I was not installing that show and I just walked in on opening night, I was like, wow, every single time I'm just like, I didn't know what to expect. And it was a really like wonderful moment. And just, I've always thought that they're really, really great.
I think it's really cool when you have 2 artists that their work is completely different, and then they come together and you're just like, I don't know how it's working, but it's working.
Yeah, completely. Yep.
Yeah, those are some of my favorite shows, is when the 2 artists' work and styles and media is just wildly different. Like Brooke, I remember your show with Alyssa and the last show in that space. And yeah, there've been others where you're just like, what? But then it starts to like it starts to congeal into something totally new, and that's always really fun to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to collaborate yet. My show is coming up in August with Suzanne, and so my experience with play has been mostly in architecture, which is very rigid. There's a lot of codes, there's the way of doing things. So I'm excited to do it in a completely different atmosphere with someone who is high energy and excited and super creative. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that collaboration with Suzanne is going to come through. I think we have somewhat similar, aesthetics and materials. So I think we can make something really cool. And I'm looking forward to like actual play and not a lot of following the rules. Yeah.
Are you thinking you're going to build something though, in terms of like a architectural structure?
I'm not sure yet. I'm not very sure, but I would like to work on a collaboration with her. I think it'd be fun. We're both makers, so it's going to work well. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good pairing. I'm excited.
That's going to be amazing. Yeah.
And that's kind of one of the cool things about, being a member of Icosa is that you can experiment and, we never let fear, prevent you from trying. Right. And so it's just like, you just opening yourself up. Whereas, at a commercial gallery, you have practical concerns and, you have usually a gallery owner or curator that's going to kind of, corral you in. Whereas Icosa, you just do whatever you want, really. And so it's just,
Right.
Yeah. It works.
For a commercial gallery, they have a certain expectation of what your work's going to look like. So we don't have that expectation on ourselves, and it doesn't necessarily have to even be saleable, for better or for worse.
Yeah. Do you guys, when you do a show, do you take a commission for the collective, or how does that work?
Artists get 100% of sales. Also 100% of sales from the gift shop. And so, the way in which we're modeled, hopefully the artist is able to make their dues back. And so, plus more. And so the way in which we structured our dues is, obviously you have rent and everything, but we want to have it to where you can sell, one piece and, make your money back for the year, and then everything else is gravy. And so, that's very important. But, with rising rents and everything in Austin, it's, this balancing act. Fortunately, we've been given a really, stellar deal from the management company Canopy, which we're grateful for. We did actually re-sign our lease for 5 years, so we're not going anywhere, hopefully. And yeah, but it's that balancing act. It's just for the member artists, and then also what we can do with the community. Honestly, in terms of our finances, we work at a deficit, and so those those openings where people are giving us donations, the grants that we can get, that really helps to offset it. Because at the end of the year, we're just looking to get back to having a little bit in the bank to be able to pay the bills. But that's kind of how we're structured. It's really for the benefit of the artists members.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's great news that you're there for 5 years and you've kind of got things set in a pretty safe way. But I think it is a really interesting question for the broader art community these days, definitely in Austin with rising rents, but also in the world of, pandemics. Like, this may not be a one-off. And I keep hearing thrown around these ideas of like a post-exhibition world and certainly a post-gallery world and all of that. And do you guys have any thoughts about what that looks like or how your work fits into that? Because I know you've done programming throughout the pandemic, so you probably already have some experience with that.
Well, the main ways that we pivoted was during the pandemic, we had the window exhibitions so that people could view from outside. And then, like Jonas was talking about, we put the sound in the rafters outside the window. And so you could have kind of a multimedia experience looking at the work. So that was one thing we did. And then another thing we did is we're working on getting our store online. And we have all the Icosa merch up on an online store, but we're soon going to have all members' works up on the online store as well. So that's another way to put our work out there during more closed times.
Yeah,
I think another.
Go ahead.
The videos that Brooke touched on. One of the things that came out of this too is we started doing the interviews, to put content online, and it's sort of like, we should be doing this all the time so that, my family or friends or people in another state who aren't going to see the show, they can actually see the images and hear us talk about it. So it's one of those things. It's like, oh, this is a great idea. Like, we should just do this all the time. So that's some things that came out of it.
Mm-hmm. And we've adapted, as the pandemic has evolved. We've we'll allow people in the gallery with masks and maybe only 4 at a time, and we've been testing it out. And I have a feeling it's gonna, we might open again and we might close again, and it's gonna fluctuate just depending on how things go. But it's nice to be able to be flexible along with it and just think of ideas as they come and figure out ways to still function.
Yeah. One of the things, as well as that we've been utilizing is QR codes. And so, usually, back in the day, you'd go in, you'd have the big artist, the image list, et cetera. And so we started using the QR code where people could just use their phone. And actually what's kind of cool about it is people can take it with them, right? And so they can like go home and you can make a big file with images and bios and stuff. And so that's something that we'll probably end up continuing to use after the world, returns to normal, whatever that is. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point that the pandemic has just forced galleries and artists in general to make what they're offering more robust. I mean, it puts a lot of pressure on us too, to like, don't just make art, but like do all these other things. But the fact is that we were already in an internet world, and so learning how to be more adept in that and more literate and just, have more offerings and more ways to start a conversation is great. I'm fascinated too by this idea in Bartlett, Texas. How did you get the rights to the town? Like, how did that
happen? It's Jonas. I mean, if you know Jonas well, it's like, of course he did.
Story with that is I was, my mom and dad used to go to the Stagecoach Inn in Salado back in the day. Which is a really old hotel. If you haven't been there, it's great. Salado's a great little craft town. My mom loves crafts, and you see her lawn. It's full of little gnomes and craft things. It's great. I love you, Mom. Anyways, and so I was like, my wife had an idea. I was like, well, let's take your mom to Salado. And I started looking at it, and they redid the whole hotel. And so it went through. It was an old hotel. Sam Houston stayed there. And then, it turned into kind of a motor inn type thing. It's it's off 35 in Salado. Mm-hmm. And then this group came in, and I forget their name, but they came in, and what they did was they tore up all the parking lots, and they planted trees and everything. And so now it's this place you can go and just park your car, and they take you on a golf cart to your room. And it's a great little thing. They have a restaurant. So if you're looking for a great weekend, go check it out. Hopefully, they're doing all right with COVID and everything. But, so, I was thinking, I was like, okay, cool. I've been down 35. I'm going to take down the back road, down 95, to go to Salado. And so traveling through, we came through Bartlett, which it's like, wow, what happened to this place? This is like, it's like we're the place that time forgot. And so, it kind of just stuck in my mind. And a couple of weeks later, I was looking on Glass Tire in the classifieds. And I noticed that Robert Zalkin, who is a entrepreneur, was looking for people to, rent space. And so I contacted him, said, hey, I'm interested in coming out, checking it out. And so I went and talked to him, and he's like, yeah, I bought, the majority of the buildings here. I'm really looking to, reinvigorate the town, have it community oriented. I really want it to be, arts, centric and have artists here. And I was like, well, hey, maybe I can help you out with that. And so I had worked with Leslie Moody Castro, on a juried show that we had at Icosa, and I know that she has a very strong social practice. And so I knew it was very important to get somebody that has a social practice involved because, art and gentrification, are intertwined, and I didn't want that to happen. And that's the thing is with Robert, he kind of didn't, he didn't know it at first. And the thing is, this is not malicious. He just, he didn't know it. But he's somebody that's very open to like, oh, okay, wow, this is actually something that needs to happen. And so, to have somebody that is a developer, entrepreneur, that is open to giving money to the arts to help and really kind of bridge that community, that's the relationship that we kind of formed. And he kind of gave us, open reign on the town. And so Leslie's been out there working with the 4 artists that I mentioned before, and, they've been doing great work. And, really, it's not just artists coming in and creating something and then leaving. No, they've embedded themselves in the community. The community knows them, and I look forward to kind of seeing, where it all goes. We've kind of been, stalled by COVID, of course. We want to do it in a responsible way, and so, we're kind of, hanging in the air like a lot of things to kind of, in terms of what the final, look of it will be in terms of an exhibition. What will that look like? But it's been kind of neat to be part of that, and so. I ended up getting Icosa involved because I think it needed an umbrella organization to kind of help, promote it and kind of be there for it. And, I can't say enough about, Leslie and her work there, Jade, Ellie, Ame and Mark. They've been doing a great job. So.
And are the artists studioing out there or living out there or doing anything like that?
Robert's given them a whole building to do whatever they want. And so, there's this, I think I think he owns about 15 buildings. And so it's just he understands that, you know, it's about kind of helping facilitate this thing. You know, he's a developer that plants trees rather than cuts them down. And so, you know, he's very great, very generous person to work with, and, you know, somebody that really understands, you know, that he doesn't want to do this in an irresponsible way. He wants to do it in a responsible way, that there's enough equity for everybody. There's enough for everybody. And so that's one of the things that I love, you know, about him, and, you know, about working with the whole group of artists. So.
It's such a dreamy idea, because I do a lot of driving through Texas, and we pretty much always take the non-interstate route, you know, and go down through these little towns, and just all over Texas, you've got these old main streets with great brick buildings, beautiful glass storefronts, and things are boarded up. You know, there's nothing going on, and so many of these places are really depressed. And I agree with you. I mean, as local or native Austinites, we know about gentrification, and nobody wants to be the one who turns a town into something, you know, that no one can afford. But at the same time, bringing art and culture and dialogue and something where members of the community might be inspired and feel, you know, like there's a little bit more vitality. I wish there were a way we could just like turn that into a whole, like, get all the little towns that want this, get all the artists together, and like just make this happen.
We're actually kind of talking about that, just in terms of kind of like creating some sort of organization that facilitates that, because, you know, you go through Shiner, you go through Güero, you go through all these little towns, and it's like, you know, after graduate school, you know, I graduated from RISD, yeah, you know, and so it was just like, you know what, you go to New York, right? And so I'd already been to New York, and I ended up getting this residency down in a small southern town called Spartanburg, South Carolina. And it was a year-long residency, to where they brought 3 visual artists and 1 writer. And it really kind of changed my mind of like, or, you know, expanded my mind of like what art can do for the community. This is like, art can facilitate community. It's not about just creating something that you sell in a gallery that goes over somebody's couch and, you know, great, that you can actually use this to bring people together. And so, you know, that was one of the things that, you know, kind of coming into Bartlett with, it was just like, wow, you know, it's just like, you know, if you bring artists in, because artists bring fun, you know, you can actually make this work, and, you know, and really kind of help to like bridge that between, you know, to bridge the community. And so.
Was that with Maria Britton?
Which one?
Maria Britton, was she involved in that Spartanburg group?
I'm not sure. It doesn't sound familiar, but might be. You know, there were a couple cohorts after mine. The way in which they formed that was the town had approached the branding company, and the branding company was like, okay, you have no artists here. You have our very little artists here. You are losing people. We recommend you doing an artist program, and I think I was the third cohort to come in. So, and I think they had maybe 2 or 3 after mine.
Okay, let's see. We have a question. Yeah, this is a good question. I was thinking about this too. How are your interns for Icosa chosen?
You just email us, and so please email us.
It's been kind of like people who just approach us, and some stick around and some turn and run when they see, like, maybe that doesn't happen often, but like, you know, what the time commitment might be. I mean, we don't, you know, it's really kind of, they jump in and really help. Natalie and Juliet, just, you know, they're on Slack, they come to our meetings and stuff, and they just really enjoy jumping in to help. So, but people have approached us and said, I'd like to intern. I've had gotten UT students and Texas State students who are looking for internship experience to come. They're students, so they kind of come in for a minute and then you don't see them again. Like, so, but yeah, I mean, just, I guess, email, right?
Yeah.
So often that's the case, right? It's like, how do I get in touch with you? It's like, just get in touch. It's okay. But we always think there's a protocol. I think I had a follow-up question about that, though, in terms of like, same with maybe the window dressing and some of your other programs. I know sometimes you guys just do an open call, like you say, we're looking for this, but are there any other avenues?
I mean, again, I would just say email us. We're actually booked out for window dressing through the end of the year, but Leon and the team on window dressing definitely take applications and reach out and, you know, just find a spot down the line that's open.
And
Also,
with that, oh yeah, go ahead.
come to openings. I mean, get to know us. I mean, it's just like, come hang out. I mean, when we can, I guess now. But, that was always the thing. It's like people, ask, how can I become a member of this and that? It's like, just kind of show up and start talking and like, it's like getting to know each other, type thing.
I had a question, but I forgot it.
Sorry.
But that's okay. I would love to hear if anyone else who's watching has any questions. Let us know.
Well, I did want to mention that Alyssa Taylor went, and I have a show up right now at Icosa called Vessel.
Yeah.
And it is up through May 8th, and we have open hours on Fridays and Saturdays from 12 to 6. So come on out and check it out. And there are only 4 people allowed in the gallery at a time with masks as well.
I was going to ask when is that sound space thing happening, or when are people going to be able to apply for that?
We'll probably try to get that out this month. Again, it was a proposal that I proposed that Tammy and I proposed this last meeting, which we have a meeting every second Tuesday. Everybody signed off on it. So it's now to kind of get it together. So we'll probably put that out this next month for an open call, and, so stay tuned.
And the best way for people to follow is just Instagram, or get on your newsletter, or anything else?
All of the above: Instagram, website, get on the newsletter, drop by, wave through the window, yeah.
Cool. Well, it's been a real pleasure to hear from you guys and understand more about the inner workings of Icosa. It's an incredible organization. And I've loved hearing about sort of all the ways that it's growing outward, as well as keeping your core programming going. Do you have anything else coming up that you want to let us know about? Like, what's the next show after?
Our next show, actually, yeah. Our next show is one of our exchange shows, right?
Yeah, it's with Light and San Antonio. And so they're going to show with us in May. We have Raisin McIntosh, who's going to be curating it. The way in which we do those exchange shows is that we usually find a curator in each of the towns to curate the show. So, we found a curator here in Austin to curate their work, and they'll find a curator in San Antonio to curate our work. And so it kind of opens, it widens the circle, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. And so they'll be showing in May. We're looking forward to it, depending on how COVID goes, et cetera, with openings, it's still up in the air, but we're very excited about it. And yeah, looking forward to kind of getting to talk with them and kind of see how they run their thing, and, vice versa.
Sorry, what organization did you say? I think it cut out. I didn't hear.
Clamp Light.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm excited about, we haven't done a crossover show like this, exchange show within Texas. And I just really like that it's with San Antonio, like, to make that connection. It's such a nice, warm, like, art community down there. I really like it. And it seems like we're not that far apart, but it's, we did a little Icosa field trip a couple of years ago and went down there and did studio visits. And I'm just excited to kind of get us together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
San Antonio has a great art scene. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. You can watch this afterwards if you have friends who didn't make it, or if you missed the beginning. You can go to Big Medium's website. There's an archive section for these coffee chats. So you can watch this later. You can also watch past chats, and you can see what's coming next, because I don't remember. We have them twice a month, so check that out.
Awesome. Thank you. I've really enjoyed that programming in the coffee chat. So thank you guys for letting us come and be a part of it.
For having us.
Yeah.
It's been great. Thank you.
And to all the people that we didn't mention, your thank you for all your work with Icosa, and I wish we could have all had 20 of us, but it would have been raucous and crazy. But
we've all been on Zooms with too many people, and we know what that's like.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Cool.
All right.
Well, thanks, you guys.
Fun.
Good to see you.
Bye.